Newport, Rhode Island, a seaside New England town founded in 1639, famous for its Gilded Age mansions, rich sailing history, and gorgeous scenery. JFK and Eisenhower even had their summer White Houses in Newport. It's quiet in the off-season, so we thought, what better way to remind the residents that summer was coming than with the sounds of a highly modified Audi A3.
Welcome back to A Valiant Effort. I'm Nick, and today we're going to see if it's worth buying and modifying a 2017 Audi A3.
Oh my god, that seagull just dive-bombed the car. Okay. This is a 2017 Audi A3, but it's not just any Audi A3, it's a heavily modified one.
Right off the bat, this car, it does have a lot of modifications to it. This is kind of a new series we want to do where, you know, bigger modifications, something where it's not just a simple tune, because, I mean, any car you can kind of put a simple tune on, even a naturally aspirated car. You're not going to get a lot of benefits out of that, but with a car that has a forced induction, like a supercharger or a turbo, you're going to get a lot more benefits from a simple tune. There's way more options, and I mean, at least with German cars, which I'm more familiar with, there are quite a few good tuning options out there. So this car is integrated engineering stage, we'll call it stage 3. And I call it stage 3 because it does have a big turbo on it. Well, it has an aftermarket turbo, let's put it that way. This has an IS38, which is a direct turbo off of the S3 as well as the Golf R. So essentially right now, this car is an S3. You know, I say that kind of loosely, like obviously it's still an A3, it still has an A3 badge. The owner, thankfully, did not decide to put an S3 badge on it when it's not an S3. You know, it's nice, it rides really well, it drives really well. Integrated Engineering did a great job with the calibration of this tune. It's not jerky, it's not lurchy. I think it drives exactly like a factory car would. And so as a part of getting the turbocharger and the bigger IS38, it does come with some required modifications, which do include a downpipe. So that is required. This car specifically has the Integrated Engineering downpipe as well. It also has a cold air intake. This one is from APR. And, you know, it's a great little product. It's not particularly loud. Like I have an Integrated Engineering one on the Golf R, and this definitely is not as pronounced, which could be good and bad. If you want something a little more stealthy, I think this is a great option. But if you're looking for something a little more rowdy, a little more showy, then this probably isn't the right intake for you.
It's really fast. It's quick. It's quick. The Golf R is very quick. The Golf R has a different way of delivering that power to you. It's almost like more of a parabolic thing. And what I mean by that is like the turbo, it's like it comes on and comes off in a way that's like manageable. This like comes on and then keeps punching you in the face. And I kind of like that actually. I enjoy it. But because it feels more modified-esque, like it's more jarring, it's more intrusive, it's more aggressive. Whereas the R, because it's made the way it is from the factory, I know Nick is stage 1 and everything on his, but it just, that feels more cohesive. And not that this isn't cohesive, it's just, it's more aggressive, it's more modified. It's a modified experience, you know? Because you're doing things to your car that haven't been, there hasn't been years of R&D by a premier auto group.
All A3s are a DSG, specifically in this year. So that means when it comes to tuning, it's super simple. All you're doing is you're doing what's called a TCU tune, and basically they're calibrating it. They're increasing the clamping pressures. They're increasing. I don't know. I'm not going to pretend to be an engineer, but it makes a difference, and it is required when you do like stage 2 and above. Stage 1 you can kind of get away with the stock programming, but stage 3 you're definitely going to want to have a TCU tune, and integrated engineering actually makes one as well. So this car does have that. It pairs really well. Shifting's great. Upshifting is fast. Downshifting it's not slow by any means, but it is a little slower than a Golf R or an RS3. So this has kind of the most basic iteration of the DSG. The Golf R has an in-between, and the RS3 is going to be the quickest, fastest, most kind of beefy DSG that Audi currently makes. And it's nice, it's smooth. It's nice where you need it to be. I think it's very efficient. This car is a 6-speed, so you definitely get, I think it has more sense of speed than the Golf R with the 7-speed. The gears are a little bit longer. I think it really does a good job of putting this power down with the gearing that it has. That's something I like over the Golf R.
At the end of the day, minus the exhaust drone, I'm just driving around in drive right now. The DSG is, it can be a little annoying sometimes, a little jerky, but not so much so that I think it gets in the way. I'm never driving this, at least in the few hours I've spent behind the wheel, I'm not driving it with frustration. I'm not feeling annoyed by the way it shifts. It's fine. And then when you do want to get on it, it responds really well. It's pretty aggressive. I'm not going to do anything right here. I'm driving by like a park. There are children playing on play forts, so I will not be doing anything aggressive here. But at the end of the day, it does the job that you want, because this obviously has the DSG tune as well.
Handling wise, I think is where a base A3 really isn't going to shine, especially compared to something like a GTI, maybe a WRX. It's just, those cars don't quite have the same, I guess, daily drivability. Like the A3 is a little more catered towards, I think, the daily driver. The owner of this car did do he did coilovers on this car, so they're ST coilovers, and he's gone through a couple iterations of suspension. I haven't been the biggest fan always, because the second set I thought were terrible, and he eventually came around and agreed. He thought that they were also pretty bad. It was worse than stock ride quality wise, but performance, it was a little bit better. I think the way that these coilovers are set up right now, it rides still a little bit softer than the Golf R, but handling wise it's very similar. It takes corners really well, it takes bumps and undulations really well. It does a great job going around really tight corners. You don't have to, if you brake late in the corner, it does a really good job. Rotates the body really well, and that could be part due to the white line sway bar. And a lot of these Audis and kind of Volkswagens that are all-wheel drive, they just do much better with a rear sway bar specifically. It's something I personally want to do in the Golf R, but if you were going to buy one of these and mod it, I think it's well worth the $200 to $300 to do that.
So this A3 with its particular mods performs as well or even a smidge better than an S3 or Golf R, albeit less cohesive and smooth. The speed really is intoxicating, but we highly recommend a rear sway bar like this car has if you really want to have fun in the twisties. The thing is though, it still has to be a good daily. So what does the A3 offer on the inside?
Let's talk about what it's like to be behind the wheel of an A3, because this A3 is basically just an A3 on the inside. No modifications have really been done to the exterior or the interior, which is nice because you know what? It's a daily. The owner of this car drives it to work, drives it everywhere. He needs it to be comfortable, so he left it the way it is. And let me tell you something. Audi A3 gets a lot of shit because people say, A3 is not a real Audi, not a real Audi. Because it doesn't have Quattro? I mean, it does say Quattro right here, so it doesn't have Quattro. It has a Haldex all-wheel drive system. But besides that, I don't think there's a dip in quality in here. Now, Nick had an S4, and I spent a lot of time in that S4. I don't think that the materials in here are lower quality than that. I think one thing I will say is that there's less stuff. It's pretty Spartan in here, and for those of you that have driven an Audi A3 S3 or RS3 of the 8V generation, I think you'll know that there's not a lot in here. The screen comes up, it can be hidden away, I can make it go bye-bye. So if you hate the way it looks and you're not using it, just put it away. If not, right now I'd like to use it, and so I am. And I've got to tell you, I enjoy sitting behind the wheel of this. The steering wheel is super nice. It's beautiful to look at. It's the kind of classic round Audi wheel. The airbag's small. It's very sleek. It's flat bottom. And all the materials in here feel nice to the touch. These buttons, we're going to harp on the buttons for a second. They feel so good. Listen to the click. We'll show some videos of that stuff, but you know, everything just is where you want it. And as far as auto climate control, in our Should I Buy review on the Taos, I talked about how I love the 3-dial analog climate control setup. But here, as far as auto setups go, you got a temp for each side, auto button, fan speed in the middle, and all the little buttons for where the stuff goes. I like that too. That's really good. Heated seats. And look, one thing I really value in a car, especially a car that's a daily, is comfortable seats. And this has very comfortable seats. They're very soft, but they do sort of still hug you in a bit. They're obviously not sports seats, but they are, they're bolstered enough that it's not like you don't feel like you're flying about, if that makes sense. And the lumbar support is definitely there. You know, they're not, I don't think there's adjustable lumbar in these. Oh, there is. Never mind. I stand corrected. There's adjustable lumbar, at least in the driver's seat. And I could drive hours and hours. If it weren't for the horrible drone, I could drive hours and hours in this car. Unfortunately, one of the downsides of getting some noise from your car, of course, is going to be drone on the highway. Now, when we were coming down here, if you're over 75 and you kind of put your foot down a little bit, it sounds like a bunch of baritone bees just like right next to your ear. It like actually rattles your head a little bit, and I hate it. So if I were to do this, I'd probably nix the exhaust modification, because let's be honest, 4 cylinders don't sound very good anyway. Not that this sounds bad. It kind of adds to the fun, modified experience. As far as the screen goes, and I know we're reviewing this more as a modified car, and you know whether or not you should do that. I will say, I guess from that angle, as far as the interior goes, don't change anything in here. Everything in here is great. Everything feels good. Everything sounds, the clicks all sound good. I love it. It's terrific. So the center screen, not a touch screen. So I'm using Apple CarPlay right now, and you use this dial. I've heard a lot of complaints about stuff like this, but the way it's implemented in this car is awesome. It's really intuitive. You can spin and get to things really fast. I honestly think, I mean, obviously if the screen was right here, that would be different, because I think at that point, obviously, you know, touching is probably easier, but you don't really have to look at it too hard to know what you're doing. And you can also click the button up and down like this, side to side, to do the same functions as spinning it. So whichever you prefer. I personally like to spin it, and it feels great. It really does. All these buttons, I can't stress enough. These buttons feel great. So if you're looking at something like a GLI, or a GTI, or a WRX, or anything like that, you're just not going to get the quality out of this. This just has superior quality. I have always preferred Audi interiors to almost anything else, at least in the past 7 to 10 years, give or take. They're just so high quality, and they do it really well.
Okay, so yeah, sure, we know Audi makes a good interior, but many forget the A3 because it's the little Audi. We think it's really good, but what you probably care about more than seat comfort is 1, what it costs, and 2, is it worth modifying such a pedestrian car?
I had to do a poll there, but so this car, all in right now, performance-wise, which are required for the Stage 3, I think he's in at about $4,500, maybe a little closer to $4,000. So that includes the ECU tunes, the TCU tunes, the actual turbo, the downpipe, the cold air intake. This does also have a Berger Motorsports intercooler, which I would highly recommend. I don't think it's specifically required, but if you're going to do multiple pulls in a row, you're definitely going to want the added cooling from an intercooler. Overall, the owner's in it about, probably $6,000. That's if you're installing everything yourself. I think if you were going to bring it to a shop, maybe it's a little closer to $10,000. And I think at that price point, it gets a little, personally, it's going to get a little dicier. And I don't think that it's going to be worth that. I think for the price that he bought this car, which is about $20,000 less than an S3 or a Golf R, the $6,000 investment is well worth it. It's 100% a different car. It's just as good as an S3 or a Golf R. Where I think this may slack a little bit from the competition is it's definitely catered more towards the daily driving style still. If you're looking for all out, balls to the walls performance, this probably isn't the right car. I think a GTI is going to be a little bit better. I think a WRX is going to be a little more performance oriented still. I just don't know that this car is really the best in that one category. But something I say a lot about Audis is that they just do really well at everything. So it's still going to handle really well. It's still going to be really comfortable. It's still going to have a really good interior and infotainment. Maybe all those categories aren't the best, but overall, I think for, when he bought this, $26,000 investment with the modifications, I see the value in it all day long. Now, right now in this market, these cars are going for about 26. Again, add the mods on, you're at 32. If you weren't going to do the mod yourself, maybe you're at 36,000. I just don't see the value in that at that point. I would go for, I don't know, maybe a higher mile Golf R. This car currently has 50,000 miles. Still feels like a brand new car. These engines can go a very long time, super reliable, and I think it's a little tougher to sell to me right now in this market, but at the same time, every other car is inflated, so I think, to me, I'm still going to kind of go back to this if you were looking for a daily driver. I think if you want ultimate performance and you don't need all-wheel drive, the GTI is a better car all day long. It is going to be a little bit louder. There's a little more wind noise. I think the ride, it's a little louder. But in terms of straight up performance, it is going to be better.
So the cost for this owner was 100% worth it. And we don't even recommend every mod he did, so there might even be some additional savings as far as the modifications go. This is S3 level performance for a $15,000 discount, but it is a German car, so will modding it eliminate that discount on the back end?
Now, here's a thing that might sway you into getting a Volkswagen Audi Group product. You can modify them, and they can still be reliable. Now, we're not going to go into every car here and say which cars are going to be reliable if you modify them, which cars need to be kept stock if you want any amount of reliability. That's not the purpose here. But I will say this is a Gen 3 TSI, and the Gen 3 TSI can be modded up the wazoo and still work, and that's awesome. And you can mod, there's almost no ceiling to the modification. I think there are a lot of cars that are quicker stock, but their ceiling as far as modifications is much lower. And also, like I said, this motor is tried and true. It only took Volkswagen like 12 years to figure out how to make it reliable, but it is now, and it is when it's modified too. You know, and honestly, I think a lot of Volkswagen Audi products are very reliable modified. Let's just look at Nick's 2015 S4, for example, Stage 2 EPL, and that, he drove 70,000 miles, original clutch, original everything, no problems, no issues. Really, they hold up well to that. So here's this is the mini parade here. Jesus, 8, 9 minis, something like that. You can count and let us know in the comments. How many Mini Coopers did you see? And here comes another one. So you know we appreciate a car that has a substantial aftermarket. VAG. Have you ever met a Volkswagen guy that hasn't modified his car? Probably not. And that, I think, just goes to show how much you can do, and that's awesome. So with this car, it feels worth it. $4,500 in, and it's, you know, you've got all of this power. Wow. Even at like $3,500, it just whoosh, it just goes.
So if you've made it this deep into the video, we hope you're either convinced and subscribed, or at least enjoyed yourself, or headed to the comments in a rage to call us heretics. But if you're still here, Nick and I have some final thoughts to share on this pretty cool little A3.
Now, the only other thing that I can think to note with this car is it does only come in automatic, which in this car is specifically a DSG. Now, maybe that's a drawback, maybe that's a benefit, but let's say that you're looking at the other cars in the competition. Teddy and I, we think that in the competition you're looking at a WRX, maybe you're looking at a GTI or a GLI. We also think a Focus ST kind of fits into this category, as well as a Veloster N. And if you want an automatic, you're kind of left with a GTI, which, you know, again, great transmission. You're left with a WRX. I actually don't know if the Veloster comes in an automatic. I think it does. But if you want, so the WRX also does, if I didn't mention that already. And I think where this car shines is if you want an automatic that's also all-wheel drive, that literally leaves the WRX or this car. Now, between the two options, the WRX is a CVT transmission, and it's horrendous. Where this car, you get the DSG, you get the faster shifting. And honestly, if you wanted to modify a car, I actually think it's a better and a more desirable, maybe a cheaper alternative to doing these modifications, because all in, all you need is a TCU tune. Where manual, like, you might need a clutch, you might need upgraded flywheels, you might, you know, there's a much bigger financial investment in modifying a manual transmission car. I'm not saying it's not worth it. I'm just saying if you're looking for the ultimate performance at essentially the most attainable price point, then a DSG really is the best, you know, kind of decision. And I think it's the best all-around decision for someone who's maybe trying to be a little financially cognizant. Overall, I think that this car is a great value. I think it's a great all-around car, including where it is now. I mean, really, it feels like a more comfortable Golf R, and it has all the performance that my car has. It's actually a little quicker because my car is only stage 1. And I think that the owner of this car is really happy with it and the way that it is right now. And, you know, I think if you were in the market, you know, go out and drive one. But I think that you'd be really happy with it. And I do actually think that you should modify an A3 if it's something that you wanted to do. Now, I wouldn't recommend buying this car specifically like, oh, you know, I'm looking for a performance car and I want to modify something. That's really not what this car is about. And Teddy and I both agree on that. I think where this car really comes alive is, hey, I want to buy a really good daily driver, but also something that's extremely moddable, and I'm going to get a lot more power out of it. this car in that scenario makes 100% sense, and I think anyone's going to be really happy with it.
I'm surprised how much I like this, by the way. I came into this, I was thinking A3, whatever, bunch of random aftermarket shit on it. All this stuff fits together very nicely. I would recommend this build, doing exactly what Andre did to his car. Perfect. I would nix the cap back and I would raise it up a little on the coilovers. But the coilover, I'm comfortable in here. The ride's not jarring. It's not jostly. It's probably a little stiffer than stock, but it's not unbearable. And I don't even think it really takes away from the comfort because the seats are so good.
So, should you modify an 8V A3? The short answer is yes, but today's market is relatively unpredictable and inflated. This same car with the mileage it had when the current owner purchased it would go for an additional $6,000. So is that worth it to you? It's fast, pretty reliable, and the mods are endless. You do pay a premium though to get this type of performance out of the box, so you have to consider, is it worth the trouble to go through and modify this car? Maybe, maybe not, that's up to you. But if it is, I'd say have at it.